What's going on, everybody? Let us know if everything sounds okay. Do we sound all right? Spencer, do we sound okay?
Uh,
You
I
think we?
think we sound okay.
Okay, yeah. Let us know in the chat if everything's looking and sounding good. Hello, everybody that is here already. We're just hanging out.
We got a yes or risky.
Yes, Risky. Is there music? Can you guys hear the music?
Oh, wait a minute, because it might be in live with palette
Oh, it is.
only.
You can go to that one. That's fine.
Okay. Here's our music.
It should be at the very bottom.
It's on. Okay, hold on. We're gonna figure this out.
So there's like no way to. You could right click and do interact. You see it?
Yeah.
And then it should pop up a new thing for you. And then you can just play the very first song. Is it on the Sarah? We almost had it right. We almost had everything right. Oh, and I've gum. We got it?
I think we have some music.
I almost want to double check, but...
Hold on. They're gonna tell us in 2 seconds.
Well, I just also want to double check that it's like instrumentals only.
Oh, we did.
Okay, so it's filtered the way it was before. It just was turned
I
off.
played the top song. Yeah. Okay.
Let me get rid of my gum.
We're professional.
Look, there are a lot of moving parts here. Okay.
I think we have it.
Are we cool?
I hear it. I see.
I want to double check it so bad.
Uh,
Because I just don't know. Like, it didn't log us out or anything, right? It's like the same thing.
no, it's the same thing you were looking at.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll just roll with it. We'll assume it's working. Hello, everybody. Here we are. Our audio should be good. Let's check this camera.
He said, "Man,
Okay. Go back to this camera. Go to this camera. Ooh, look at that. Rock and roll. So we have our alternate Nightblade sculpt here. You can see that. Our dervishly devilish undead risen dwarf. I've already been working on the cloak a little bit. We're going with the standard risen purpley scheme here, and I'm not sure what I want to work on today. Pretty much everything is base coated, other than the cloak. I know that's kind of confusing to say, like, it's base coated and it looks like that, but whenever I'm working on box art stuff, I always start very dark with very little information for myself, and I sort of build the volumes up from there. So you can let me know in the chat what you think we should work on. We could work on the face, we could work on the beard, we could work on gloves, we could work on daggers, we could do like glowing. I plan on doing like back from behind the skull and in the eyes, the risen sort of neon green glow as well. But that sort of should be done like after I render out the skull more and everything. So up to you in the chat. We're really just hanging out here today. We don't really have any plans other than being here with you guys. So whatever you think, give us some suggestions. But I will, I don't know, maybe grab some tan or something, and we can just like slowly work on starting the blades. They're like bone blades, so makes sense for our skeletal buddy to be using bones, I suppose.
we got a sound is good."
Sound is good.
I'm so happy.
It's been a lot. It's been a lot. The last time we live streamed, both of us had COVID. We didn't know at the time. It was like that day 0 when like someone didn't show up in the morning and they're like, "I have COVID," and then the next person wasn't there tested and said, "I have COVID," and then another person tested in the office and they said, "Oh God, I have COVID," and then we started feeling bad. And by the end, like probably even 20 or 30 minutes into that stream, both of us were like not okay, and like we had audio like that was a big day. That was a big day. But we're back. I'm still like getting winded randomly. I think Spencer is a little bit as well. I think you're probably a little bit better off than me. I don't know.
I'm feeling okay right now.
He hasn't been complaining as much as me, but everybody else is on the mend too. So it just took it out of us. But yeah, it was just crazy that it all hit at like the exact same time for everybody. So, but yeah, that was pretty much all of last week. starting on like Wednesday into... I wasn't here Monday, and I went home early on Tuesday, so I just still wasn't feeling it, but we are here for you now. So I'm mixing purple and tan. Purple? I looked at the purple. We're doing fine. Brown and tan. And I'm just going to start throwing it onto our knife here. Both knives.
Someone wants to know what the mini is from.
The mini is from Rivenstone. So that is our skirmish war game that is in production right now. We are currently fulfilling the Kickstarter. We're going to be opening up for pre-orders directly as well soon if you missed out on the Kickstarter or late pledges, anything like that. But yeah, we have, I don't know, I don't want to put like a percentage of completion on like where we're at, because that's not my department. That's more of a Nate thing. But I do know we have pretty much all of like the Iron Guard and Oryx complete, and then the Shattered Empire is currently being etched away at, and then the Risen will be sort of the last hurrah, I'm pretty sure. But we're looking good on our production timeline as planned. Like every time we give an update, it's like, yeah, it still looks like our initial delivery of that June, July area of 2023 this year. And in-house, we haven't really been doing much. I mean, all of the minis that were painted for the Kickstarter, right, have been painted, and then we do have the alt sculpts, so they've been coming in. But we have been slowly, like Spencer and I decided to start just sort of for fun putting together some war bandies, right? So 2 different lists. I have some Iron Guard, and then he has Oryx. I have his Oryx next to me. He assembled them and like put them on some cool bases and stuff, so we can show those off at some point as well. But if you want more information, you've never heard of Rivenstone, you can just type in on Google Rivenstone Kickstarter, and it will take you to that info. You can see everything you need about that. But yeah, that is what we're working on today. And I would say this is, you know, a piece of box art. I don't know necessarily. I was kind of told to just like paint it how I would paint it. Obviously, I am not the painter that painted all of the original box art, and I paint in a little bit different style, but we're still going for you know, the color scheme and everything that makes sense. I had painted the alt pose Battle Master, I believe, for the Oryx as well, and that was before we had our paint. So we're using our first test batch of the Broken Anvil paints as well right now. But previous to that, the one that I had painted was just, I think, some like Reaper paints or something, if I'm not mistaken. I was painting it Reaper and Vallejo, I think, but I had shared that on my Instagram. I don't remember if like we shared it out as a company or not, but I had fun. I did a pretty dynamic base with it and everything. But so what I'm doing right now is I'm really starting to sketch in texture and sort of building the volumes where the highlights are going to be on the blade. And I mean, they're bone, so I don't want them to be like reflective like metal, but I can still at least get some nice value in there. I mean, maybe they are, like, I wouldn't say reflective. Maybe they're a little bit shiny though, like they've been sharpened or something. But I always go up with our paints. I'm actually going to use a different brush, but I always over highlight first, and then I'll go back with the middle tone. Which is a little bit different. So if you've been on our Patreon, where we're releasing painting tutorials and all that good stuff, you can check that out, patreon.com/brokenanvil. We ship physical miniatures to you every single month. It is a brand new offering. So if you knew us previously from our STL Patreon, we no longer do that. We now ship physical minis and then do a ton of content related to those minis. This first month, we ended up shipping out 9. We gave 6 bonus minis to people for a little celebratory thank you to the people that had signed up. But we usually paint in a little bit different way whenever we're doing the tabletop level stuff for those videos. But whenever I'm doing this stuff, I always sort of work back and forth, and by that I just mean between light and dark the entire time, and then I typically somehow get to like my final color. So somehow between those steps it works out. But as always, too, if you have any questions, anything like that, throw them in the chat. Spencer will either clack and reply, or he will ask me. So one of those two things typically will happen.
Someone was asking if these minis were going to be available to for an individual purchase.
Yeah, so whenever Rivenstone is fulfilled, and like I said, we're going to be doing pre-orders here pretty soon, but whenever it is fulfilled for everybody and is in general retail as well, you'll be able to buy stuff. So I don't think that like you'll be able to purchase. So if it's like a unit of 3 minis, you would have to purchase the 3 minis. But like the Nightblade is a individual hero. I don't recall if the alt sculpts are hitting retail. I think they were. I don't know the specifics on that, but it's a war game, so typical war game sales structure in terms of being able to purchase stuff. But yeah, the unit sizing is relatively small too, so it isn't like you're buying 60 minis, or well, no game is really like that, only historicals, but it's not like you're buying a unit of 20 guys, right, just to get one. Typically our units are 3 minis, 2 or 3 minis.
Someone was looking for clarification on how the minis for Patreonership, if they join now, they're asking if they get the minis for this February.
Yeah, so as long as you join before March 1st, you will get those miniatures. We are literally about to start shipping them today, so we have all things for all patrons packed, but really all that means is we just try and ship things in bulk towards the last week of the month. But if anybody joins literally like at 11:59 p.m. on the last day of the month, you're still going to get the minis. They just will ship to you like in our normal online order turnaround time, so a day or two, like whatever day of the week, you get a couple business days. But the reason we ship a little bit earlier towards the middle of the month is just so that when the content goes live for those minis the following month on a Friday, everything comes out on Fridays, you should already have the miniatures at home ready to rock and roll. So that's kind of the structure and the idea. We could have done a like direct release schedule, but I think it's always better to allow shipping to happen, and that way you don't feel like you're behind when the miniatures show up. Instead, you're ready to rock and roll. So that's also why we do our videos. Like a video came out today as well, but we like releasing the videos on Fridays, so that way you then have the weekend to hang out and hobby along. So, but good question. And then, yeah.
Someone was saying, you said you highlight then go back and with other tones and such. Do you think this brings out highlights more, or just reminds you where to better place them?
No, so the reason I go back and forth is because that's how I'm getting things smooth. So I would rather do rougher brush strokes, like sketching. I really like my paintbrush to be more like a pen or a pencil the majority of the time, and then I'm able to smooth, like, the cloak here is pretty textured, but you can see the volumes that I've built in, and the way that I build those volumes is by going brighter and then glazing back down on top, so that way I get those transitions. I don't really mix on the palette like color to color, meaning like I'm not going to mix a dark, like if I'm mixing 2 different colors, I'm not going to do 4 different versions between those 2. I'm going to literally apply the bright color on top of the dark color and then glaze my way back in between. So that's really what I mean about going back and forth. The amount of paint that I use, like you can see on the palette, is very minimal. That also helps because of our paint literally is so full of pigment that you can get it incredibly thin and still get a ton of utility. The people that we have sent the paints to already, we've gotten some feedback, and they are very impressed with what it does, and that is one of its qualities, is being able to run thin and give you extremely good coverage and work that way. So, but in general, even before I was using these paints, I did the exact same thing. Spencer can tell you, when I started working here, we switched brands, and then I was teaching him how I paint, and he was able to hop right along with that too. It's a lot faster. You go between layer to layer a lot faster too, and it really cuts out a lot of like the middle part of painting traditionally, because you're sort of starting from a middle point. So
boring part.
yeah, you get you get past the boring ends and you immediately move into your like rendering stage. So, and then the more time you spend doing it, the more refined your paint job can be. So you can do something that takes a little bit of time, and you can just keep pumping it up. So like, for example, right, I have a mini here. This is a Games Workshop mini. But so when we were testing our test paints, I painted this guy in about 3 hours. So, and this is just combining, and he isn't done. Like, I didn't finish the horns, and I didn't finish the hair there. But, like, our paints act like contrast paints because of the insane amount of pigment in them when you thin them with water. So he was primed, pretty much a super strong zenithal, and I applied that green just thinned down with water, and it gave me pretty much all those highlights naturally, and then I just went back and brought out some of those edges. You can see our fluorescent green paint there is super, super crazy bright. But going thin like that allows us to, you know, go a lot faster on our paint jobs and everything like that. But this is just an example mini. We've been painting just literally random stuff with the paints so that we can, one, have a lot of examples for people, right? But two, just sort of get used to the paint itself. But we've been using it now for, I don't know, like since Thanksgiving or like, I don't know when.
Yeah, it's been a while. We got the first set.
Or maybe early December or Christmas. I don't remember when it happened.
Before break, for sure.
Yes. I think maybe, yeah, it was like maybe December, like middle of December, I think, is when they got here, so.
Someone was asking, is this the paint blubber consistency on your palette right now?
So yes, but it's so thin it's painful. So like, I'll do it on the back of my hand here. So it is that you can see how it's pulling, right? Like this is that flubber consistency, but I use such little paint that I'm able to control precisely where it's gonna go. I can also taper my paint, so I can continue to let the paint come out of the brush. That's why I use natural bristle brushes, but I can get even surface tension. What's funny, I don't remember, Spencer, did I show you the thing about like drawing lines and stuff?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what I'm doing here, and I'm tapering the paint from this side to this side. But as long as my brush is wet, which on Patreon there's like a whole thing about how to make sure your brush is wet and not too wet, I can use, and you can see on the palette cam I'm barely grabbing any paint here, but whenever you're at this consistency, you can use your paintbrush like a pencil, which is what I was explaining. You can have extreme accuracy like I am right now. I say that I'll probably mess up, but let's see. Can you see this?
Oh yeah.
There you go. So that is sort of the consistency. Also, the amount of paint I just used is crazy. So that's kind of why I'm so excited about these paints, because it was like a fart of a whisper of a dream of a secret amount of paint on the tip of the brush, and I knocked that out. And you can see too, right? Like it's on there. It's not going to come off. So, but yeah, that's the consistency. That's why it's so important to be able to have that, so that way you can get. So there, that's how small I wrote too. I don't know. Finger for scale, I guess. Does that help? Thumb for scale. But that's the consistency of the paint, if you guys are wondering. That's what I work with pretty much all the time. I'm gonna grab a little bit of yellow and shift this paint around. I'm gonna get yellow and then get some or warm tone white. This is yellow 4. Yeah, let's see, where's the white? Right here. But yeah, good questions. Good questions.
Someone was asking, what paints are these?
These are our paints. These are our Broken Amble paints. We have finally got, these are our small test bottles. So our final bottles are going to be either 17 mil or 20 mil. There's not like a huge difference. It's really just the type of bottle between that. But you can imagine a Vallejo, or I mean, literally, I have a Vallejo game color bottle here. This is 17 mil. So, but pretty much all dropper style bottles are 17 mil or 20. But we got slightly smaller ones made, so that way we could send them out to a bunch of people without like doing a full gigantic order and production run. But so we have slightly smaller sample bottles here, but we've been testing previously in other videos too with like these gigantic bottles that we had. I mixed the entire palette. There's all kinds of stuff. Like, it's really hard to sort of describe. Spencer could run and grab why don't you go grab that bucket that has those bases, or just the thing of bases, that way I can show.
Oh, sure.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to see on this mini, but the paints that we wanted to design are extremely high quality, so they have all natural pigments. They're not non-toxic, meaning they are toxic because they have real pigment in them. That's just kind of how that works. But because of that, we pretty much told our partners to give us the highest pigment load possible. And as I was hand mixing the pigment, there are all kinds of different things involved between like making sure that I don't add black to anything. The only time you maybe see, actually no, you don't see black in any of our darker pigments. The only time you see white added to the pigments is whenever you hit like our brightest sort of pastel that we put together. But beyond that, they're all 1 to 2 pigments each. A couple or 3, like I think 2 of them maybe have 3 pigments. And they are super high density, super high quality grind. And we wanted to create something that could grow with you as an artist. So whether you're a hobbyist and you just want to be able to paint something quickly, or if you're like a competition level painter, you can utilize it the way that I am here, right, at these insane levels of thinness, and you're able to control, you know, really everything from color temperature of your palette to saturation of your palette. Doesn't matter what it is. We have different color temperatures in our white and our black, so whenever you get the line in the first offering, we have 3 whites and 3 blacks. One is cool and warm, and then additive. The additive is a pure single pigment, and the other 2 have a little bit of a warm tint or a cool tint. So the white and the black allow you to work in the same color temperature family as whatever else you're working with. But that's sort of more of an advanced thing, right, about color theory that some people may or may not know about. But what's really special about these paints is that they work like contrast paints. So if you are, but they're not contrast paints. So I'll explain it a little bit further. We showed this off on Patreon. We haven't shown this off anywhere else yet. I don't remember. But so these bases were primed pure white. And what we did is thinned the paint 50-50 with water and just blopped it on, right? And what happens with these paints is that because there's so much pigment and there's such high quality pigment that it dries similar to a contrast paint, meaning you're getting these super smooth transitions of color. And that's what you can see here. There's no tea staining because of the fact that, one, there's no additional like additive to make this effect happen. A lot of contrast style paints are mixtures of pigment, binder, and ink. We don't have any of that. We literally are just giving you very, very high quality pigment. And then the only thing that determines, you know, how thin the effect is whenever you're doing it is the amount of water that you add. So if you're a new painter and you like to do like slap chop painting, different things like that, these paints allow you to just purchase one thing. And then as you grow in your skill, or even if you don't want to do that, right? If you just want to be able to one day go, I want to figure out how to do a power sword or something, right? You can get your paint where it needs to be without purchasing a totally different line. I mean, there is a hobby tax, and there are products that exist solely for the hobby, right? We talk about that a lot when we talk about the wet palette. When, you know, people are like, what kind of paper do you use? And we tell them we use burger paper, right? Like, we don't buy anything fancy because we get what, like, things exist already without being sold to us in the hobby. And we felt that way about paints. We wanted to make something that was really, really high quality, artist quality stuff, and allow you a super wide utility in what you're doing. So hopefully that makes a little bit more sense, but like I was saying, right, this is just mixed 50-50 with water. You can probably tell, right, with me writing like "Hi Mom" on my hand, that pigment load, because it's so high and we've decided to go that direction, allows us to get these really amazing results. All we did was then paint the rim of the base black, but it's just a white base. Yeah, you can see that there. We did it for the entire range on Patreon. We didn't have our camera settings like super honed in, so the colors were a little bit off, but it's really hard to get all of the colors correct whenever you're doing, you know, video work like this. But hopefully that helps, answers the question a little bit. I went like super in depth, but
someone was asking if they could lick their brush.
No.
told them no, but probably a public service announcement.
Yeah, no, you don't want to lick your brush. So brush licking in general is a really bad habit. I mean, first of all, you're ingesting something that your body can create an allergic reaction to. Unless you're using nothing but non-toxic paints, it's a bad idea. On top of that, if you use a wet palette, when's the last time you cleaned your wet palette or disinfected it? When's the last time you disinfected your cup that you used to use your paint water? There are plenty of people out there similarly, right, to like the dudes that'll say, oh yeah, clean your airbrush with brake fluid, right? Or like, you know, people will say do XYZ, and just because it hasn't killed them yet, they don't think it's a bad idea. But brush licking, never a good idea. I remember when the 2 brush blending method was like really hot, and it made me cringe so much because it's, first of all, disgusting. Your entire miniature gets covered in spit. But 2, it's you like the entire time you're just rolling the dice that you're not gonna like catch strep from painting your miniature, right? But with these paints, I would equate it similarly to using any kind of artist quality pigment. They tell you definitely do not ingest the paint. Similar to oil paints, you don't want to do any of that. So there is a definite distinction in quality, and we decided to go with quality rather than something that you could literally chug by the gallon and not get sick from. So, but yeah, that's also why our saturation's so much different, our pigment load is so much different, right? Artist quality paint, similar to anything that you would buy that's artist quality for like traditional or fine art, they are never non-toxic because they're giving you the real deal. So, similar to Chimera too, right? Chimera's line, Scale 75's artist line. I think even some AK pigments are also toxic just because they use natural pigment. So it isn't completely unique to the hobby, but the consistency of our paint and what you can do with it definitely is. So that's what we're excited about. But yeah, I'm just going through, building up sort of all of my boundaries here on the bone blades. But you can see I've just been building in texture the entire time, sort of shifting the tone too a little bit on the blades, but I'll keep going brighter until I want to start working my way back down. And I don't really have a specific like thing I look for when I go, oh yeah, time to go back down. I just sort of wing it. I am shifting this a little bit more yellow though. You can see on the palette I keep grabbing the yellow. I know the palette cam is backed out. Normally when I'm painting I use way more paint than this, but this is really giving you an idea. I don't think it's gonna autofocus. Let me see. No. I can try and go closer. We make it a shadow. There you go. Just because of the placement of our lights. There. Does that help? I don't really have as much room, but you can see how thin everything is. Whenever I'm working on box art stuff or anything here in the studio, it is always this very, very thin amount of paint. I just sort of want to tint this stuff a little bit more because sort of the most prominent feature. So I always look at miniatures and I go, okay, what's like the 2 things that people are going to pay the most attention to? And usually it is a weapon or accessory and then something on their body, so like cloth. And this guy, it's obviously the big cloak, and then I would say probably the beard, maybe. I mean, definitely like a focus on the face, but I don't know. I mean, we're gonna already do like a crazy glow and set behind the eyes and stuff, but I would see the blades like this as an accent, so that's why I'm kind of shifting them more yellowy orange in terms of a tint, so that way it contrasts with the purple since it's such an overarching like part of the mini. And I'm just doing glaze tints right now, nothing crazy. But yeah, thanks for hanging out with us today. Earlier at 10 a.m. we had another Patreon video go live. A full paint tutorial, I think it was like an hour and 20 minutes, start to finish, so not too crazy for those of you to follow along at home. You can check that stuff out, patreon.com/brokenanvil. And if you haven't been following us on social media, definitely do. Join our Discord if you can. I know I'm very active in the Discord usually. I can answer questions throughout the day.
Someone likes your texture. They said their texture over smooth.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. All of my favorite painters are more illustrative in that sense. Even like if you've seen our Archon, the big 90 mil, he looks pretty smooth just because he's so gigantic, right? But even he has texture. Just sort of pulling my paint in the direction that I want it to taper I'm using a sort of a yellowy brown to start tinting out the inside portions here of the blade itself.
Kind of like we talked about, you're using color as a form of contrast.
Yes, I'm using color as a form of contrast, you're right. Always want to be able to do that. And I'm kind of like really pushing it in there on the tip of the blade. I don't know if that's in focus. Sorry if it's not. I think it is. It's really hard for me to tell. I can sort of guess and do my best, so.
Someone asked if the paint has a strong smell.
No smell. No smell. It's not like some of those old GW inks that literally reeked. And Chimera also has some weird smells, but all of our paints have the exact same density and consistency, which is great. I know that that is something that is not as common with natural pigment paints, but that's like the one thing that I was extremely clear about. So we want them all to be familiar in consistency. And I've used like all of these other brands that are artist quality. So like Scale 75, or not Scale 75, sorry, Chimera takes you a minute to get used to. Because the consistency is all over the place between the different colors. Some are super runny, and some are like bricks that come out of the end of the bottle, so you kind of have to like learn how they interact. All of these come out the same. That's already some of the feedback we've gotten from the painters we've sent them out to. So they're like, I love the consistency, easy to work with, but you can see I'm going slow. Well, I'm going fast, but I'm adjusting slow. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's what I'm currently doing.
Do we know this is the alternate sculpt Nightblade?
Yeah.
This won't be a part of the Risen box set, will it?
No. I don't think the Nightblade comes in the Risen box set. Maybe it does. Am I wrong? No, it doesn't. This is like the additional hero option because you get the Exiled Knight, I think is what it's called.
Yeah.
And then you get Quorum. Yeah, there you go. I'm not, I think Will might be watching. Hungerford may be watching from the other room. I'm not sure. If he is, hey, feel free to pop those in, but I don't know exactly a lot of the detailed specifics on stuff. I know enough. Kind of the I just work here answer, but more so I just paint here. So I know the paint. Yeah, if you end up asking a question in chat that like we literally don't answer, we see it, but we also probably just don't know. So sometimes people ask us questions about stuff and we just literally do not know. And I mean, I guess we can reply, I don't know. but some of the stuff, right? Like. We are a small company, but like each of us has different hats we wear, and usually multiple hats each, but Spencer does all kinds of different things as well as running all of our equipment here and painting, so I do all kinds of different stuff too.
I had a very interesting week, lots of different things I'm working on.
Yeah, he's been burying bodies. Just kidding. So I think what I'm going to do as well, whenever I sort of move these highlights up on the bone, I'm going to shift them to a cool tone. So I'm going to start using the cool tone white to help build the highlights back in. Because they're so warm, doing dot highlights with those would probably work really well. I'm just slowly pulling the brush down on these edges to build them up. I don't want anything to be too sharp too fast. I always try and save that for like the very end. Is the music still working for you?
Oh yeah.
Nice, okay, cool. We're trying to make it a nice, relaxing stream. I don't want to jinx anything, but we felt really confident about this stream today, so we were like, you know what, we've had so many things happen, I think this is the one that'll be good, so. I'm gonna take a little drink really quick. I haven't been just sitting and talking for a long time for a while, so
Stay hydrated, everyone.
Yeah, definitely don't cut to the church cam. Whatever you do.
Do you want it?
Mm-mm. Don't do it. That was the wrong camera.
Misclick.
Oh. Okay. Back in action. Oh yeah, let me get the cool tone white here. Did forget I said I was going to do that.
Oh, hold on. Here. There you go.
Oh, okay, there we go.
There's that camera exists.
This camera exists.
I'm a professional.
He's really good at what he does.
I was multitasking. I was going to use the click clackety typewriter right now.
Yeah, our keyboard in here is a mechanical keyboard, so we were hoping that whenever like the music was playing that it would help out. You can type. We'll see if people hear it in chat. Like, how loud is this keyboard?
This is normal typing.
It's probably not that bad with the music, if I had to guess.
That felt good. Yeah.
Cool. So if you're wondering the difference between those two pigments that I was talking about, like our cool tone and our warm tone white, that's the warm white, and then that's the cool white above it.
They can't hear it.
They can't hear it, see?
Oh my god.
I did it right then.
Yes.
That's good. Yeah, it used to be like an issue. It was so loud, so. So I'm gonna take some of the cool white here. Look at that. That's that flubber consistency. It's just so thin. It gets absorbed into the brush, and I'm gonna mix in this. There we go. Super thin. Make sure my brush is completely wet. I'll go ahead and do the thing. So whenever I'm saying my brush is wet, okay, you see it full of water, I'm gonna tap it. Now it's wet. So that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for not a flooded brush, but just a wet brush like that. That way I can continue to use my brush like a pen or a pencil. So I can be super accurate with what I'm doing.
Someone was kind of curious about the pigments in the cool white.
Okay.
They said, is it pure titanium dioxide?
No. Nope. So we have our additive colors, and additive white is a pure white pigment, and then our black is a pure black pigment. But the additive white has some blue mixed in, and a sort of grayish tone. And then our cool black also has the same thing.
It's just super awesome being able to shift any color you want.
Without losing the temperature. That's kind of like, so obviously anytime you add white or black while you're painting, you're desaturating what you're working on, unless you're, you know, painting something that's white or black. But by having like built-in color theory into a palette, like I wanted to make sure that we could do, you are just helping it not lose as much of that as you shift up and down. Our palette is a little bit different too, because as you work your way through the different tones, or sorry, colors, the value itself will shift a little bit between them. Some more sort of obvious than others, but we also shift temperature between the pigments. So like our purple range is really nice because some of the purples are cool tone purples, some are warm tone purples, and even if they're sort of similar, if you're working with purple 2, for example, and you want to go to purple 3, the actual difference in brightness between the two isn't huge. It's just a difference in color temperature. And so if you want to then use one of those colors more prominently on whatever you're working on, you then add the cool tone or the warm tone white to then shift it up. And then you can obviously mix in something else too in the palette, but that allows you to retain that saturation and that temperature a lot easier than if you didn't have something like that going on. So that's kind of the idea, and I think it helps a lot. So I know that has been sort of part of the feedback we've gotten so far as well, is like how people thought that was pretty smart to do. It was something I always thought I was missing in the work that I would do, because it's like work you end up doing yourself, obviously, and it's nice that other people also agreed that yes, this is a thing, So feels good.
We've got something here that hits close for me. Someone says, I'm still struggling to learn how to see value. I can see it when I have a scale, but just eyeballing it, it's hard for me when it's a fully saturated color. I can empathize with that a lot.
So by like fully saturated color, do you mean an opaque, like a fully opaque coat of paint? I just want to make sure, based on what we're saying, that it makes sense. So for me, value, if you're saying I have trouble seeing value, are you saying you're not sure where you're placing highlights?
It means maximum chroma.
Okay, I don't know what that means. So
I read the first sentence and learning value has been, I think, one of the harder things because it really is just time, right? Like learning these shapes.
Yeah, like usually the value that you're looking for is all based upon. There's a little bit of personal preference in terms of like how you build volumes, and then like where you're going to apply those shapes. For like this cloak, it's more illustrative. Some people, there's all kinds of different ways you can take it, but for the most part, whenever you're talking about that, you're talking about the relationship of your light source and the material and basic shape that whatever it is that you're painting has. So all of that usually just a primary basic shape like a cone or a cylinder, something like that. And usually that comes down to you sort of having a visual library in your head of basic shapes and things like that. If you have any sort of traditional art training, that's like part of why you go to art schools, because they sort of bash your head in with a lot of that information. I went to school for studio art and acrylic painting, so I'm at least lucky on that side. But that being said, I also been painting since I was 7, like miniatures, so I have the two combined. But what I always recommend for people that might be having those issues, you can always look up digital illustration shape reflections, and you'll see sort of like direct representations of what it may look like with brush strokes on basic shapes. So that's a good way to kind of cheat your way through that to figure it out. But the other thing too is making sure you have a really good light whenever you're working. Usually if you're working with wet paint or a black primer and you don't zenithal, something like that, if you have a really strong light source above you, usually one on the left and one on the right, you will see the actual volumes reflected in front of you. So sometimes it can be a little bit more subtle, but if you're literally looking at your miniature, you will see a highlight pop up where that volume is collecting light, and then you can get used to seeing that subtlety and painting what you're seeing. So using your actual light source also is a good way if you don't sort of like have a style in which you like to apply stuff and where you apply it. That also helps you out. So that's always kind of my like checklist for people. But if you're sort of beyond that point, then looking into actual like the way certain volumes and shapes hold light and bounce light back is like the next step. And then the material, which isn't really something you have to study. I mean, you know, if you think of a dirty bone, which is kind of what we're painting here, you wouldn't assume that it's like oily and really shiny. It's probably like old and dusty, you know. So just sort of thinking about the object that you're painting makes a change as well.
References though too. You're ever stumped just looking at
Yeah.
an old bag if you're painting leather?
Like the reason why, if you're in college and you're at art school, you do a lot of life drawing, is for one, if you're doing still lives, it's literally so that you're forcing yourself to draw really boring stuff. I mean, now, no disrespect if you think like still lives are the most cool thing on the planet, right? But what you're doing is you're literally sitting there and you are making your brain get this memory of a different library of materials and how they reflect light based on light sources and all of those things, right? Like you're sitting and you're doing the work. The other reason too you do life drawing of naked people is because you are paying attention to, one, how light is falling on an extremely organic object, two, how anatomy works at all different shapes and sizes, how to break down all of these things, right? Like traditional arts education is sort of boring in that regard because you're just doing these same things over and over. But what it does is it allows you then, once you know all the rules, how to break them and do them quickly, right? And so with miniature painting, I think it's always important to kind of have certain crutches that help you get to those stages without having to do hours and hours and hours and hours of painting to get there. And so, you know, a light source, a zenithal, using reference, all of those things help you out. So Or just even buying, like, if you see somebody that does a crazy paint job on something, buying the exact same thing and then trying to copy it 1-to-1 and do the best job you can is a good way to practice as well. Because even though you're copying something exactly, you're still going through the motions of understanding why something would have been painted the way it was. So you just have to think about it in a more academic way, and then eventually you'll be sitting down one day and you'll be looking at an object and you'll go, wow, I'm looking at the way the light reflects on this and how I would have to paint that. And then you realize, like, miniature painting has taken over your life, and you know, you'll be fine. You'll be okay. Happens to the best of us. So
I think what you said, it goes with, like, it's kind of corny, but all aspects. It's when you're doing something as a hobby, or when you start getting really nitty gritty with it, you know, and like wanting to be better. There's a difference between the two.
yeah, there's definitely a distinction between, well, and I mean, when I'm painting for myself, I'm painting to have things finished. So, like, I'm not sitting at home like, yo, I'm gonna sit here and put in 19 hours on one mini. Like, that's a lot different when I'm here and that's my job, right? But, like, I don't paint the way that I paint this stuff for me. I have, like, a reason to get things painted, and I want to play with them, things like that. So, you know, unless you very specifically want to do, like, higher level painting because you want to do display level work and whatever, then there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's also another thing to keep in mind. A lot of people, like, compare themselves to things they see online and they're like, I'll never be that good. And it's like, yeah, but is that what you really want? Like, you want to sit and spend 12 hours per miniature on your army that has 98 miniatures? You're never going to be able to enjoy it, you know? So you just have to think about what it is you're trying to do, what you want to get out of it. Alright, so we've just been going back and forth on these for a while. They're kind of boring me at this point, but that's how that goes, man. Doing bone daggers. I don't know what I'm going to grab here. I'm kind of feeling maybe a green or something. I know it sounds crazy, but
You're crazy.
I'm crazy. How are we looking on time? Oh, okay. Doing pretty good. We're going to hang out today for about like an hour or so, I'm gonna grab like a cool darker green and then sort of tint stuff around that way too. But again, as always, thank you so much for paying attention to what I'm saying as I look at my phone. Thanks for hanging out with us today.
I couldn't see because the palette was
Yeah, that's my secret distraction zone. That's where the palette cam is. There's actually a whole person standing here. You guys just can't see him. Alright, so I'm kind of making like a sickly green brown. The other challenge with this too, right, because these are bone blades, like, I need them to look different than however I'm painting the actual body of the Risen, because they're all bone. I mean, maybe I don't have to, my brain tells me, like, they shouldn't look the same because that's whack. Like, they should at least be different, so. I don't know, we'll see. And I'm moving a lot in between some of these tones, and sometimes it gets to you. I do want to shift it a little bit in a different direction before kind of trying to render it out. I'm still not at a stage where I want it to like be sort of that last final push of detail, so everything right now you could either say is like technically a base coat, or I'm just moving back and forth between texture, so I'm not really like in that finishing stage at all. I'm just going really thin, so like, okay, yeah, the green is definitely going to help, because then that also contrasts against the purple. But I do need it to dry in between, and I'm going thin, so it'll dry relatively quickly. Drink again. I'm so thirsty under these lights.
Someone was saying they don't even see you adding water. Are you just using the water on the brush? I think they just don't see how fast you're.
Oh, I do it so. Yeah, I do it
Hold
so
on,
fast.
If you want to hit them real quick here, I'll go with.
What I do is this, and then I start working.
Very sped up.
Yeah. So, but that's what, like I was saying. So right now this brush is like the consistency that I always work with. So you can see this is how much water's in it. And then I'm gonna go ahead and reset it because I've touched stuff. So we'll put you on the high mom cam. And then I'm grabbing a little bit of paint. Remember, my brush is wet. The only reason I want it to be wet is so that it can bend. That's literally the trick. So that's all I'm doing it for. But you can see that taper right there. That's the whole idea. So there's so many. I could do like a whole thing about.
On your hand.
Yeah, I mean I can. It's a really good place to kind of show how that interaction with the paint works when it's thin. But you're always essentially doing cursive L's whenever you're painting on a miniature, and that is how you should be tapering your paint, applying it. All of these, there are so many things. I've taught thousands of people at this point about the cursive L and why it's essentially what you're doing when you're doing sort of high-level miniature painting. But
It'll probably be on the Patreon.
maybe, I don't know. Do I give away all of my secrets?
Oh man.
That's the real question. As an artist, if you work for a company, and then you start realizing, like, I gotta give them everything? I gotta give them everything?
Selling your soul.
Selling my soul? I've already been doing that for a long time. Not selling my soul, but
Oh.
before working here, that's what I did for years, was teach painting, so. It has been my thing for quite some time. There's a reason why I kind of just have it all locked and loaded when it comes to explanations, because I have been explaining. I do like this green coming in though. It's not super noticeable. I mean, it kind of is there because I built it in more, but it's doing what I want it to do. So. And then I need to go through and re-separate. There's all these like notches, right, on the sharp edge of the blade, and I have completely been ignoring them because I just want to get the actual, like, I guess, colors correctly before going in and trying to detail anything out. It's kind of like that last finishing step I always talk about. If we get there today, you never know. But this does give you an idea, like, other than talking and being distracted by Spencer the whole time, he's like dancing in the corner right now. But other than the streaming aspect of it, this is how I work on stuff, you know? I just go back and forth, back and forth. Sometimes, obviously, too, I have to be more calculated depending on what it is. Like, the Gigantic Archon, you know? It's like, alright, I gotta sit here and really plan my time accordingly because it's gonna be so easy to get trapped at different stages, but it's, again, going in incredibly thin. It's funny because it's like the palette came as worthless at a certain point whenever I'm going as thin as I am now. I mean, you just can't see it on the palette, but it's there. There's the paint, right? It's also like sorry, let me just completely retry that phrase. That's also why I like wearing the black nitrile glove, because I can always go, there's the paint. It doesn't necessarily show up on skin as easily.
You're a smooth operator.
Why?
It's the black one.
Oh. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, totally.
My joke hit.
That's me. It's hitting. It's giving joke vibes. Okay, let me do one of those quick little. I'm gonna grab another color moves here. I think I'm missing my. I'm not missing anything. I'm missing nothing.
Losing.
No. Yes.
Missing your mind.
Yeah. Friday. Let's go. Everyone put on your Friday hats. Let's go.
Oh, yeah.
Let's go. Okay. Is that what we needed?
Beautiful.
Does that help?
Yeah.
If you ever wondered what it was like to work with me, I know, I mean, who doesn't wonder that every day, right? But, that's pretty, a novel or a deposition, one or the other. But that's pretty, accurate. Just going in with a little bit more concentrated green out here. Just to give it some funk. Like that James Brown song. Make it funky. And it goes, da, 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 da. You guys know the one. You know. It's kind of, I'm kind of getting close to, is it the Italian flag that's like orange, white, and green?
Irish flag.
Irish flag too? It's just, yeah, it just depends on where it's hitting. I do kind of have to be careful there. I'm going to end up covering a lot of this though by the time I render it back out. I just want to build it in underneath. I want it to exist so I can make it almost not exist. That's like a lot of the trick to what I'm doing, but except for on the cloak when it was like very obvious what I'm going for. Because it's a purple cloak, right? I mean, it still isn't done. I've been skipping around this guy a lot. But obviously today, whatever I'm doing is like sort of like, well, I hope it works out because I know I'm going to go back and fix it anyway later, so. But we hadn't worked on any like Rivenstone stuff. Oh, you know what? Let me show Spencer's guides as well. We'll take a break from...
No paint.
There's no paint on him or anything, but he has been assembling and basing, and this is a bunch of paint bases. Hold on, let me put these back real quick. We have every single color here. You want to go to the top camera? Wow, look at the whole palette. Wow, look at that. You just got a whole thing just for you, just for us. All right, let's check out some some Oryx here. Okay, so we've got a Battle Master, right?
Yes, sir.
Big Battle Master on a base.
They're gonna be in the jungle.
They're gonna be jungle themed. Then we have Brutes. Got a unit of Brutes here. These are all the production like finals. These are all in COCast. Big boys. So I'll show what a Brute is next to this guy. Very
big boy.
Big boy. Yep. Almost broke something on the table. Love that. Okay, then we got some flingers. Our boomerang-esque, blade-esque, throwing-esque ranged unit here. See, we got the other flinger. And then we have 2 units of murder birds.
My favorite unit.
They're called Carnotaurix, right?
Yes.
Right. You can see he put them really tall and not really tall. Oh my god! Look, I'm dropping them, but it's okay because it's COCast. It's COCast. It bends. Okay. Babies bounce. Isn't that the phrase? Is that an okay phrase? Actually, this is the same sculpt. I didn't realize, but look, he put 2 separate heights of bases. But yeah, this is Spencer's list. He's still waiting to base his Battle Cat guy, whatever. Tor. Are you running Tor?
Tor.
You're gonna run Tor?
Oh yeah, he's got one of these on his shoulder, so
makes sense.
Someone's asking what the bases are made out of. I guess I can answer that.
Yeah.
I use cork kind of to add volume, and then I like the texture paste around.
Can you guys hear Spencer when he's talking? Can you give us a I hear Spencer in the chat? Just so we know.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because he doesn't have his own mic, so if you guys heard someone answer that question, please say, yeah, we heard him.
He's a little quiet. Okay.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So it was cork and texture paste and rocks and mud and all that good stuff. So you like my cat ring? Look at that, it's a cat. But yeah, I mean, we're at our hour. That was what we were planning on doing, was just hanging out with you guys. So I hope you had fun. For those of you that were able to make it, remember you can... Oh, why don't we show off here? Let's go back. We're going to do another one of those. Look at that. So we just showed off on Patreon the miniatures that we're shipping in March on Patreon. So if you join, remember, we ship things straight to your door, including curated hobby content that are tied directly to those miniatures. So these are all brand new. Everything for the Patreon is made for the Patreon in mind. So we've got our awesome Raptor that is going to be coming out in March. We have our awesome Hunter here with her like crazy winter gear, frying pan, lantern, and awesome rifle. I love this sculpt. We're going to do like a crazy snow base, like display base thing with her. And then we have our Tabaxi Catfolk Assassin. Look at that, turning into smoke. Crazy. Okay, so this is what's going to get shipped to, made in COCast here by our lovely hobby magic hands that we do, and that'll be shipped next month. Everything is shipping right now for February. Please check that out. That means a lot to us if you check out the Patreon and you like it. Patreon.com/brokenanvil. Remember, we're going to be posting an update soon on Rivenstone fulfillment. It's going well. It just takes time, right? I know that everybody would probably like more updates in between, but we would just be like, we made 10 more molds, we made 14 more. I mean, really a lot doesn't sort of happen in the big picture other than making molds. So that's what we've been doing. And we have stuff like this too that we can show off. But beyond that, we'll try and start doing more streams. We have the setup set up. I think it looks pretty nice. I think today went pretty well. I'm sure there will be something that we see that we're like, why didn't we do that? Like, but you know, we're trying our best. It's Spencer and I swinging at the fences every time, trying to make it work. So, but we appreciate you. Make sure you join the Discord if you haven't already. I think you can find a link on our website, or I don't know, or I think it's on. If you're on Twitch, I think you can scroll down and it's there. We don't have like a command, I don't think, that can send an invite out there. So I'm sorry. I know I say it like it's easy to find, but definitely join the Discord. We reorganized the whole thing, so show us what you got working on. Ask any questions, things like that. We'll try and help you out. And yeah, check out the web store. We have stuff up there as well, including like the pre-order for the 90mm Archon and all that cool stuff at brokenanvilminis.com, right? Yeah, that'll get you there. But yeah, that is it for today. I hope you have a great weekend. I hope you find $20 in your pocket. Your enemy subs their toe, forgets to read, and good vibes for everyone. We will catch you next time. Adios. See you later. Bye.